again. But it's the only way.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it's Tuesday night, which means I might as well have a night off because Liam just gets to talk for about an hour and I get to say very little. But Happy New Year, Liam.
Happy New Year to everybody out there. I'm going to try. I've made myself a little New Year's resolution with regards to NUFC Matters. I'm going to try and not waffle on so much. So we can actually get through the questions this week. I'm going to try anyway.
Well, hey, it's unfortunately you always end up sidetracked on one particular issue, and of course that particular issue again will always be the takeover. Until we get the takeover, or until the takeover collapses like a pack of cards and we don't have anything to talk about on that score, then you're always going to get hit with it. So let's start with that. There's been another big article that you put out last night. I saw a lot of people really getting excited about it. I saw one or two people being negative. I'll say Luke Edwards came out and said essentially that that's been in the public domain for many months now, going back to April. But I don't think the people who are criticising it really read your article properly. It's the first time anyone's actually been able to print the letter and put it out there and be able to see it. The letter might have been in the public domain, in people's hands, but I just don't think you really picked up the true gist of what you were putting out there. And I think it was room to be a lot happier, and I think today's news, which of course doesn't involve football at all, it's political, but the thorn of relationships between Saudi and Qatar, which we hoped would happen, has now happened. And the picture of MBS and the Qatari leader and just embracing.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I know. When you think of the position that we found ourselves in not so long ago, to see that happen when he came down the plane stairs and embraced. And I know this sounds really weird. We're on a football show here, but we're talking about like political leaders in the Middle East. But that's what it's come to.
Which I know very little about, by the way. So don't, nobody ask us questions about that. I'm sure you might have a slight more knowledge than me because you've got relatives out there. But, don't ask me. Ask Al Walid on the Worldwide Show.
Please ask Steve lots of questions on this. Everyone. It's a complex subject, but it's something that Newcastle United fans have really had to almost read idiots' guides to. They've had to kind of like clue themselves up on geopolitics and relationships among Middle Eastern countries, pressures, just everything, religion. This has had so much to it that it's been so complex. But that stuff today does add an extra layer. And I say add a layer. I would think a better analogy would be it's taking a layer away, largely. Well, we hope it's taking a layer away from Newcastle United takeover talk. Because one of the biggest stumbling blocks to any deal, we know the top six. We've talked about a lot on this show about the big six, or the so-called, the people who think they're the big six in English football. We've talked about their problems. What piracy, and that's what we're talking about here, piracy. What piracy was the only real legitimate reason as to why the Premier League could be seen to reject this deal, in my opinion, from the facts that I've seen and from the correspondence that I've seen. And I do believe that was the route that they were taking us down. I say us, taking the consortium, taking Newcastle United down. They were taking them down a road of saying, right, you're not a separate entity, PIF, so now you need to be seen as a sole, as representative of the Saudi state. And I think then if they'd managed to get them to pair together and go through the tests, I think there would have then been a rejection. You've got to say now with some of those complex parts to that being taken away, with this thorn of relations, with the offering of the hand, wherever it may have come from. America's played a large part in this, I'm led to believe, but offering of the hand between the two countries where there's been a blockade. They've stopped court cases, all the legal writs that were put out against people. That's all stopped. The legal stuff. There's been the media war, which is what Newcastle United has been a large part of in the last 6 to 8 months. That's another one that has kind of been disarmed. And you'd have to imagine that if the Premier League are going to reject this on behalf of their clubs and themselves, loss of revenue, but largely on the part of beIN Sports, loss of revenue in that area, and their deal not being worth as much, standing by their trusted partner, who they've just signed a new $500 million deal with, if they're not really that bothered anymore, or the country that run them. I mean, we've got to remember here that Al Jazeera is state-run. There is a separation now between Al Jazeera and beIN Sports, but they are effectively one and the same. So this is the Qatari state funding the Premier League and buying the rights effectively for the Middle Eastern region. So if they're willing to get round the table and put aside religious differences, put aside problems with terrorism, put all these kind of things aside, and then surely, to me, the Premier League will be able to get back around the table with everybody involved and work through this deal. We'll wait and see. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to roll and roll. Somebody's saying that it's not going to happen in January. No, I don't think it will happen in January. There's still a lot to happen. But I think essentially the news that you broke yesterday was that, you know, and then the thawing of relationships which we've seen today, it pulls the rug from beneath the Premier League, and you know, the any reason that they would have had not to allow this to go through, you know, really is starting to, you know, disappear, if you like, and that's good news for us. And you know, the ongoing legal battle, and of course we've got Keith Patterson on the show on Friday, which I'm sure will be very interesting. We'll do the Three Amigos on Friday, of course, a 2-hour show. I think we're going to need it, and I dare say that could be one of those shows where me, Steve and Neil don't get a great deal to say, because Keith's going to get inundated with questions. You've got a relationship with Keith. You've got to know him well over the last few months, and you know, I've seen him getting a little bit of stick and a little bit of flack on Twitter, which, you know, look, that's the nature of the beast. We all enjoy the banter. We all enjoy talking about Newcastle. We can all take criticism. We can all take other people's opinions. It's when it starts getting out of hand, like we've discussed. You know, we did the Think Before You Tweet campaign last month. It's when it starts getting to that kind of level that we disagree with it. But to have Keith on the show on Friday, I think you'll be able to dispel a few myths, to put a few stories to bed, and to answer any questions. So I hope people tune in at 5:30 on Friday for that. But yeah, give us your views on Keith and what he's been doing, what he's trying to achieve, what kind of person he is.
He's an honest Newcastle United fan, comfortable in life, wants to purely see Newcastle United lift the trophy, isn't doing this for the adulation, for the fame, is doing it because he wants what we want, and he's had the opportunity to sort of talk to certain people involved in this process, and put his own money where his mouth is, dig deep into his own coffers. He's spent a lot of his own cash. Like, one thing before I go too deep about Keith, I do want to be clear about this. There's a lot of critics out there of Keith on Twitter, and people sort of suggesting who might be behind his Twitter account. It's Keith. It is literally Keith. Like,
it is Keith. I can vouch for that. It is Keith. This isn't a Money Mike Ashley situation, who's reared his head again. Apparently, I've not seen it, but yeah, it is Keith. It's
Keith being Keith, and for a long time he was really really guarded about what he could do, couldn't do, guided from people above him. And it came to the new year, and I think he's kind of took all the stick on board, all the critics. He's been monitoring the trolls. He's been monitoring the people who come back constantly, back and back and back and back with the same messages whenever he puts something out. And you know what? I think he's just had enough. And he's just Keith being Keith. He's just went, right, sod this. I'm going to go at you. If you're going to come on and have a go at me, I'm going to have a go at you. And you know what? What's wrong with that? He's a Newcastle United fan, like me or like you or like everybody else out there. And people are expecting to be, they're holding NCS, like, oh, NCSL should be more professional than that or whatever. It's just a bloke on the other end of this, who's getting his opinion across. And if you're going to give him stick, he's not an organisation of 100 people where he's got people to answer to. He's just a bloke sitting there with his phone. He'll go, right, well, sod you. If you're going to have a go at me, I'm going to have a go back. Shut your mouth. And at the end of the day, that's his own prerogative. I've had people on to me this week saying, "Oh, you're going to write a story about this? He's saying this about fans and that about fans." Look, lads, if you don't like any sticks, don't start giving it out. Don't start having a go at somebody if you don't like taking it back. At the end of the day, that's what life is. If you're going to say something to somebody and you're going to be critical, expect a little bit back on yourself. You know what I mean? And that's all that Keith's doing. I can't vouch for what he's doing, what he's saying. Keith's his own man, and you'll all find that out on Friday. And he's a fantastic man, somebody who I've got to know really, really well. God, I speak to him more than mates I've known, 20, 30 years. I speak to him daily. We have a good crack about football. We have a crack about life. I've been down to meet him. And you know what? He's somebody that I cannot wait for this all to be over. We'll go for a good drink together. It's one of those things where we started as contacts and we built a really good friendship. And you know what? I think the stuff that he's been doing, whether you think it's professional, whether you think it's this, that, and the other, he's stood up. He's put his head above the parapet, as you know.
Hey!
And you know what? He's put his money where his mouth is, and he's fighting for this. He's been putting in, like, I don't want to steal his thunder, because he's got a lot to say himself, no doubt, on Friday. And what I would say is, like, he's been putting in sleepless nights almost, sort of like 20-hour days, all these ridiculous things, stopping up at 4 o'clock in the morning, sorting press releases, like Zoom conversations, like all day, every day, fitting in 10 minutes conversation with me when he can. I mean, he's been the press man, he's been the money man, he's been the financier, he's been literally everything NCSL is. Obviously, he's had help along the way. He's had a couple of volunteers who've helped with little bits and bobs. But look, on the legal papers, it's Keith Patterson and it's Gordon Steen. And Gordon Steen's put some money in as well. Put his own money where his mouth is. I can't forget about that as well. And helped along the way, along this process. But at the moment, it's Keith grabbing the bull by the horns and taking this forward. And I want to make sure everybody out there really knows this, because I've said this myself to him, and I'll say it out on here. People keep tying this in, saying, "Oh, it's him behind the Twitter account." It isn't. It is Keith, and he's just a normal bloke who wants to get his point across, and he's not interested in hearing the crap that you've got to say if you want to abuse him or you don't believe in what he's doing. He's not interested. He does not care. He wants to live. All he cares about is the Newcastle United takeover, and if he can, I know for a fact, and I put this out there around New Year, that he's lost a lot. He's put a lot of money in. He's given up a lot to get to this point. And I know if it helped this takeover 1% more, he would do it all again. I know that he's that type of bloke. He's a credit to the fan base, even though some don't believe it. He's a credit to himself, his family, and everything. And because he does a lot of other things as well. He's not just a guy fighting for this Newcastle United takeover. He does a lot of charity work. He does a lot of selfless things in his life, and you know what? He's a real stand-up bloke, and if anything, through this Newcastle United takeover, he's somebody who I've got close to and made a mate out of this process, no matter what happens at the end of it. So I'm sure he's watching tonight. So in between grafting and tweeting things to people, I'm sure he's watching.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and I take my hat off to him. And as you say, he's self-made. He doesn't need to do this. From a financial perspective, he's comfortable, and he's generated his own income, and he's put it all into the cause. And that's great. It's great to see somebody stand up and be counted. And I'm looking forward to speaking to him. I mean, I've spoken to him off air, obviously, but to get him on the show, to show transparency, and to have a chat with the fans, I think that's the most important thing. And it'll be good to have him on. And couldn't think of anybody better, other than yourself, of course, to get him on with. But Steve and Neil, who again have been superb through many takeover attempts and been involved in trying to get this club sold from within Mike Ashley's grasp on more than one occasion. So, good lads to have on. It should be really interesting. I do want to say that if you're a new visitor to the page, we've got over 800 watching, so thank you very much. If you click on this little banner on the right hand side there, and it'll bring up the word subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. You won't get bombarded with notifications or emails or anything like that. It'll just tell you when our show is starting. If you want to watch it, great. We've got some great shows, 7 nights a week. Sometimes ex-players, journalists like Liam. And we've got a wonderful panel of Newcastle fans across the globe on various shows. We also have Super Mac and Gibbo on later in the week. So please subscribe. It's well worth it. And we are doing these to get you through lockdown. If you enjoy the video, please give it a like. Comment in the comment section and share it. If you click share, it takes you to your social media. Again, it doesn't take any of your details, but it will allow you to share on Twitter and on Facebook. Help spread the word. It's a great community. We've had a lot of fun doing these since March last year, and we're going to continue. And I do want to say a big thank you to our new sponsors. which is always great to have a new sponsor. We've had some great ones over the last couple of months sponsoring our StreamYard application. This month it's the Old Coach House Distillery. Now, if you're doing dry January, this is well worth a look. And I've been told by the lad who has contacted us about this sponsorship that he's had quite a few orders already after our plug last night. So visit the website. Enter the code OCHD to claim the introductory 10% discount and get the most out of your mindful dry January. Gin-esque is the bottle there, and I have been told it is a really nice drink and you don't get the hangover. So well worth having a look at that. And of course, got to give a shout out to qtechshop.co.uk. John and the lads down there do a fantastic job. Pool tables and snooker tables they make, amongst other things, in Wallsend in Newcastle. They also make our t-shirts and our mugs. Newcastle Legends t-shirt on NUFC Matters t-shirts, and you can buy them from newcastlelegends.com. And Liam is wearing his t-shirt there tonight. Good plug. But big thank you to the sponsors. Thanks very much. And if you want to donate to the channel, you can as well. Hit the little $ in the chat. If you want to make a donation, please do. Every little helps towards putting these shows together. So let's get away from the takeover a little bit and let's talk transfers, because the January transfer window is open. And, you know, lots of questions, I suppose, will come in from the supporters about potential names and links, etc. It's always the funny season for Newcastle. We get linked from everybody to, you know, from Messi to Ronaldo. Every time a transfer window opens, when we know really in truth we're probably only dealing in the loan market. But first up, it looks as if we might get rid of a player. Looks like Rolando Aarons might have a move.
Yeah, it does. I'm gonna before I talk about Rolando Aarons and the transfer window, I'm just gonna roll it back slightly. I know we're trying to get away from it, but there was a really important question. I think it was John Askew might have put it on before.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
He did mention something about, I thought the problem was the separation between the two, not piracy. So I did mention that earlier, and I talked about piracy. Maybe I didn't make it clear enough why there isn't really a distinction between the two. So you have PIF and Saudi state. The Saudi state are seen by many to have state-sponsored, facilitated, whatever you may say, the buyout queue problem, which was basically pirating all the be-in sports programs, etc. That's the problem. So the fear is, and it's widely thought that the problem that the Premier League were going to have is they wanted to tie PIF to piracy. They wanted to tie them to the Saudi state, then they could blame them for the piracy that's gone on since 2017, all of the rights that have been lost, etc. So I hope that goes a little way to explaining why piracy is a big issue with regards to this, and why it links very clearly to the separation of PIF and the Saudi state. Right, Rolando Aarons.
Peter Baker, good to have you on, mate. He's been a big help to Keith, I know, good pal of mine as well. He still won't buy you a beer, he says.
I'm sure he will. Well, I'm hoping so anyway, after all the work I've done for him. He'll like that. Right, so Rolando Aarons, I think it's something that's been set up for quite some time. He was about to go to Huddersfield right at the end of the last window. It's been my information for a couple of days that he is on the way. I haven't seen the last couple of hours. There may well have been developments. He may well have went down there. I'm not so sure. I didn't think it was at that stage the other day. But I think he'll sign there. It's a move the lad needs to make. He hasn't. He's been a peripheral figure at Newcastle for a number of years now. He's 25 now. He's not a young lad anymore. He needs to get out there playing games. And I would say, if he gets his head down, he's got a bit of ability, and I think he could make a decent career, but he's got to get his head down, and that's something he hasn't really done at Newcastle for quite some time. There's a number of other players who could exit. I mean, there's a lot of talk from America with regards to DeAndre Yedlin. Is that something that could be developed? It's really interesting because he's come into the team. He is what he is. He's played quite well the last couple of games, but he's not a great defender. He's switched on a little bit the last couple. And we know what DeAndre Yedlin is. He's a type of player that we would want to improve upon. Again, probably the same goes for a number of players in that side, including his main rival at right back, Javier Manquillo. You'd want to improve on him going forward. So realistically, you can't keep them all. I would be very keen to get him out the door and get him out in January if they could. Despite the fact he's been playing well, and I think they might be of a mind potentially to do that if they have somebody come in with an offer, because he's out of contract, of course, in the summer. There's been some talk today about Dwight Gale as well. I don't have any insight on Dwight Gale. I do have concerns with what's going on. Concerns probably isn't the wrong word. I'm not particularly worried if he left, but I do think it's quite unusual the noises Steve Bruce was making maybe a month ago, where he talked about, I'll do everything I possibly can to get Dwight Gale a new contract, were his words in one press conference that I was involved in. Interesting words. Since then, he's barely played him. He's barely, even when games are dead, even when we're chasing a goal, he hasn't thrown Dwight Gale into the mix. He just hasn't bothered with him at all over the Christmas period, which does make you think, if he hasn't been carrying injuries here and there, that he might well let him go, because he isn't really using them and isn't part of his plan. So I think that'll be an interesting one that develops. The problem, which I've talked about on here, is Dwight Gale's wages. He's on really, really good wages. He got a wage bump when Newcastle signed Rondon because he didn't want to go to West Brom. They had to basically force it, put his arm up his back, give him a little bit of extra money. It wasn't a contract extension, but they gave him a little bit more. And it was something that has probably hampered them in getting rid of him, because he's probably too highly priced wage-wise when you're paying a fee for a lot of teams in the Championship and potentially at the bottom end of this division as well. So no, I think there could be a few go, and I think if Newcastle United want to sign players, which I believe they do, despite Steve Bruce downplaying things largely, he does want to sign players. The hierarchy want to sign players as well. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I do think they'll look to shift 2 or 3 off the books. Aaron's doesn't really count in that sense, that he isn't in the 25-man squad. So it's just a bit of wages that they'll save on him. But they do need to probably shift 2 or 3 from that squad to look to bring anybody in. Brandon Williams, somebody's mentioning there. That was somebody that I wrote about this morning. I think they've largely got that deal lined up. A lot of people talking today. I'll be honest with you, I haven't really seen the lad play live. I've seen highlights, of course. He looks a solid enough defender. Looks solid enough going forward. He has been brought in as a left back at Man United. I'm not necessarily saying that's his natural position. He might well be a right back by nature, but he's played largely his first team games have been at left back for Manchester United, but can play both. Would be a young player. He's only 20, so can be added to the squad quite easily. I think that's something that they could progress. But there is a lingering interest, as a lot of people have mentioned on here already, with Jethro Willems. Jethro Willems is kicking up a fuss over there because he desperately wants to play games. He hasn't been playing games. He isn't really a wanted man there, and I think he wants out very, very keenly. In the summer, there was interest not only from Newcastle United. I believe there was 2 or 3 other Premier League clubs had a little look at him, asked the question, how long was he going to take to get back? How fit was he? It has taken him a little bit of time. So I would have reservations about shelling out big money. I've said before in the past that there is a stumbling block to that potential deal. I'm not saying that it'll cost money. I think it would be a free transfer, but we'll have to just wait and see how he comes back, because it was a big injury that he had. We know that. And sometimes players don't come back to be the same player that they've had when they've had major injuries to major joints, such as your knee or ankle or whatever it may be. And I think we just have to be cautious about Jethro Willems. I would sign him as long as the deal was right. I wouldn't be breaking the bank for him. But I would look to bring him in, and I still think you could potentially bring a Brandon Williams in as well, because, like I say, I think Newcastle United right back. I don't really class. Whenever I think about my squads and the makeup, Emil Kraft's somebody who just gets forgetting about for me, because I just don't think he's good enough. Don't think he's a good enough centre half or right back, so I almost forget about him as a player. And I think bringing a Brandon Williams in would sort of probably potentially be a little bit of an upgrade on a DeAndre Yedlin. So yeah, I think there will be movement. Steve Bruce says there won't be a lot. He also said the same last year, and there was 3 brought in. It wasn't a particularly successful window for Newcastle United in the loan market. They signed 3 players, none of whom even got close to or particularly wanted to make permanent. But yeah, I think this time around they need a better window because they could just do with that little bit of freshening up in certain departments. The one key department which I haven't discussed so far is central midfield. They do need a little injection of dynamism of some sort in that position. I'm not going to. I seen a lot of people the other day criticising Matty Longstaff, looking like he was running through concrete. That was a lad who played 28 minutes of football this season. Hadn't played a lot of football for a long time before that as well, and was asked to play 3 games in a week. Played the full 90 minutes in 3 games. I think he was hung out to dry a little bit by the manager. I'm going to be a little bit critical of Steve Bruce there. I think that was pretty unfair. I think he probably should have taken him off in some of those games because he hadn't played a lot of football. And I think he looked like a very, very tired player against Leicester. But for me, in the 3 performances, I think he was good.
My dad said today, and obviously I had a good chat with my dad about Longstaff, Sean Longstaff, and he said it could just be the injury. You know what I mean? Sometimes players come back from that injury really well. Shearer did. Sometimes players struggle. It might just be you've rightly pointed out, hanging them out to dry and playing them in 3 games isn't a wise move when you're coming back from that kind of injury. But also, it might just be a mental thing. It's sometimes a struggle. I know Sunday League players who've been through that injury, and it's that first challenge, it's that first tackle that and it can be a mental thing. You might not be playing as well. It might be slowing them down. We really don't know, and that's up to Steve Bruce to find out as head coach.
Yeah, I just think it was really unfair. I was watching. This is Matty I'm talking about. I was watching him in the second half of that game against Leicester, and he looked an absolute spent force. The lad relies upon really sort of getting about the pitch and hassling and harrying, and he's pretty good at that. I just thought he looked a spent force. I thought it was really unfair of the manager, but he knows his squad, he knows his players. Look, I thought he hung him out to dry by selecting him at Man City. He hadn't even been on the bench. He couldn't even put him on his benches, and all of a sudden he throws him in. I thought he was almost trying to protect others. And the lad, for me, all credit to him because he proved his own manager wrong. And now I've seen Super Mac talking about that this week. Friend of the show, Super Mac, he was talking about how we were once talking about getting him into the side, getting Matty Longstaff in. It's now who's going to play with him, who will play best with him, and I think that's real credit to the player himself.
Andy Carroll to West Brom, anything in it?
I'm not going to say Andy Carroll is somebody who's safe in the squad because I don't necessarily think he is. I hadn't heard West Brom, but it's something that does fit, doesn't it? It does. It's an Allardyce type signing. Tried and tested. He'll probably take him in there. It's been a rumour that's been doing the rounds for a little bit, but it's not something that I necessarily think is a definite to happen. But I do think there will be some interest in Andy Carroll this window, because he's got that feel of a player who can come in with a bit of experience to add that to a dressing room, a nuisance on the pitch. I was just really pleased for him to get that goal. It was just a shame nobody was there to see it, because I'd pictured when he signed, I pictured an Andy Carroll goal being a real one of those moments where everybody got really sort of excited and the crowd was erupted when he scored at St James's. And he was robbed of that in a sense. It would be a shame to think that would be his last act in a black and white shirt, because he is a good player. He's just gone. The injuries have taken a toll, and he's just gone past him over the hill, unfortunately for him. But a good player in his time. But I would, if I was Steve Bruce and I'm balancing my squad out, I would look to think, does Andy Carroll really bring any consistent value to games? And by the amount of times that he's played him, I think the answer to that's no.
Nicholas asking, did Alan Shearer give the team a pep talk on his way to the TV gantry against Liverpool?
I didn't see that. If he did, I don't think he would get involved in things like that personally.
No, me neither. Lots of comments, as I say. We do try to get through most of them. ASM, here we are into the new year and still no ASM. I mean, we did discuss this on previous shows. He wasn't in the best of form after signing the new contract. Was he carrying an injury? We don't know. The club eventually came out and said that he had COVID, and it was the long COVID. Fans are scratching their heads. Some want to believe the club that it is COVID and that's the reason. ASM had gone missing on social media, then suddenly he's posting photographs, he's in France, photos of him and his family. What's your gut instinct on that?
Look, I can only take what I'm told, and that you do get an uneasy feeling about it, in a sense. But the word is from and this isn't just the club parroting what the club are saying. There is contacts that this comes from, and they're saying that it is COVID, and it's been a problem that he's had, and is really really struggling to shake. I know Jamal Lascelles was another who really really struggled, and it does open your eyes because you walk through life not really experiencing too much the idea of COVID and what it means for people to suffer, but hearing about the struggles that certain players in the Newcastle United squad have had with it and the impact it's had on them, it's been quite an eye-opener for me and quite incredible. So it's changed my mindset, the little things that have been shared with me over the last month and a half. And what I would say to people is just be careful. Just be really wary out there. Just keep your distance and be sensible, because you don't want to catch it just in case. It's a real lottery, because I've heard stories of really fit young lads in their mid-20s really struggling to shake this thing off, and it really, really affecting them. Back to Saint-Maximin. He's obviously been in France, been there to recover, for that family support as well. And I think he'll come back, and I think we'll see. Hopefully, it doesn't affect him too long, and he'll come back stronger. And it's got to be soon as well. I don't imagine you'll be. I can't put a time frame on it, but you'd hope for Newcastle United's sake that it's soon, and for the lads' sake as well, that you can shake this off and come back strong. Because purely in a football sense, Newcastle United really miss him. He's that little bit of extra quality in the final third that maybe they miss at times. That I'm not going to pile on players. I'm not a sheep. I'm not going to start piling on Joe Linton because X, Y, and Z says this, that, and the other. I think he was all right the weekend, but he's not really a goal threat, is he? And that's problematic in a position that you're playing. His hold-up play is quite all right, and I thought he was all right the other day. But he never looks like he's going to score a goal. He never looks like he's going to get close. And when you've got Almiron on the other side, who looks like a lost little boy at the moment, in this team, in the formation, the system, the positions he's playing, you're asking a lot of Callum Wilson, and the goals have really dried up. In that sense, and Newcastle United need an Allan Saint-Maximin. They need a fit and strong Allan Saint-Maximin. So look, if the rumours are right, and I'm not saying they are, but if there's been problems and fallouts and this, that, and the other, you've got to think Steve Bruce will be man enough to get this sorted out. The player himself will be man enough to get this sorted out. And I'm not necessarily saying that is the case, but the word is COVID, and realistically, that's what I think it is. There are some things that make you a little bit uneasy about his Instagram. His live that he put out there was a bit unusual. Some of the things that he did talk about in there were a little bit unusual, and did raise certain concerns, rightly, with Newcastle United fans. But ultimately, Newcastle United and a lot of the medical people in and around the club are saying it is COVID, and the lad has suffered with it. So I think we've kind of got to take their word for it.
Okay, the Richie to Bournemouth rumour that's raised its head again and mentioned in the chat. Heard anything on that? Is that something that's likely to happen in January?
I don't think it is. No, I don't think it is. I think he's a player that he's one of the players that Steve Bruce really values in this squad. So I'd be surprised. But look, January windows are interesting in that sense that sometimes you'll get managers who'll drop a player to bring one in if they feel it's needed. And Matt Ritchie, if someone like Bournemouth want to take him, he's on good wages. I think Bournemouth, if it was a permanent deal, I think that would be an interesting one, because I don't think he would take a massive drop in wages to go back down there, even though he probably would happily go back down there. So it's an interesting one. It's probably one to watch. but it's not one that I would say is imminent or anything like that.
Chowdhury from Leicester.
Yeah, that was reported in the Chronicle I've seen.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Is that a possibility or is that a no-go, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a possibility, yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay,
I think, I think,
as a
I think there's a couple of players at Leicester who are being offered around at the moment. Hamza Chowdhury is one.
Is Perez one? Because a lot of people want Perez back.
I would have him back in a heartbeat, but I don't think he is, no. The other one is Demarai Gray, who Newcastle United did have an interest in the summer. I think the lad himself kind of wants to move to the continent. His contract's up in the summer. So it's an interesting one, but he's another one who's been offered around. There's a lot of that in transfer windows. A lot of players get offered left, right, and centre. Some of them go, some of them don't. Like I say, the Brandon Williams one, it may not happen. Jethro Williams may not happen. You never know. You never know until they're done in transfer windows. And January, in that sense, is even more mental than the summer window because it's so short in nature. The deals come and go so fast that sometimes you don't even see them coming and going. So we'll have to wait and see. But I do think Newcastle United will add, and I think realistically they're going to have to drop a few to add. So there will be potential casualties this month. That's my opinion.
Wayne's question on the screen there, was Bruce given 3 games to save his job before the Liverpool game? No, I didn't think so either. Bill Burnett says most of Callum Wilson's goals in the EPL are from the penalty spot. Goals are a real problem. Can't argue with that. That is a fact. But I did put up a stat on Matchday Live at the weekend, which shows that he's been very creative as well. He's got a good record for creating goals. He's up there in the top 3. So in the Premier League. So he is important to Newcastle United's cause. Paul Oxley says Matt Ritchie's legs are gone, but his football brain hasn't. A lot of people asking about Fraser. People expected a great deal from him. He seemed to be fit. He was on the bench, and then Bruce wasn't playing him. What's the situation with Fraser at the minute? Any word from Bruce on that?
Not a word from Bruce, but you do hear little bits and bobs, and I know that he's been training. Not with the first team group as of last week. He was training alongside Jamal Lascelles. He was training alongside Christian Atsu. Not that I think he's going to be brought back into the squad, but Atsu has been sort of training separately from the main squad. And I think that's something that has to give a little bit of hope that maybe the injury isn't as bad as first feared. And there was a lot of speculation that Fraser might be out until the end of the month. I'm hopeful that we might see Ryan Fraser back. Look, I hear people and I get it. I think he's a really good player, to be honest. And I think we'll probably not see the best of him until next season, unfortunately, because of this strange situation we found ourselves in, that he never really trained or played properly from March through till whenever it was he signed for Newcastle, September. And that was really odd because you're talking about professional footballers here who've trained constantly, probably since the age of 8 or 9 years old in the academies, and that's all they're really used to. For somebody to have such a big holiday from training, I know he was training by himself, but I mean football holiday, not kicking a ball, and then not playing. He didn't play in Project Restart because of the contractual situation, or part of it anyway. I think that was really problematic. Again, he went back to training by himself in Bournemouth before he signed for Newcastle, and he didn't sign immediately. He only signed it the week before the start of the season. I think the lad's struggling. He's been struggling fitness-wise. He's been struggling to play catch-up. And what do you get when you do those kind of things? You pick up these injuries, the muscle injuries that he's picking up on a regular basis. He needs a good pre-season in him. He needs looked after. And I think Bruce did try to do that. He didn't throw him in too quickly. He did try and give him that pre-season without throwing him in. Then he threw him in at Leeds, and we've seen nothing but problems since. I just think it's a really bad hangover from this gap that he's had in his career, effectively from playing and training with a ball at his feet. So I wouldn't write him off yet. That's all I would say. I'm not gonna. It's not for my job to convince anybody whether I think you're a good player or a bad player. But I know Ryan Fraser is a decent player. I've seen him play a lot for Scotland. I've seen him play a lot. He was up in Aberdeen as a kid when I worked up there. Seen a fair bit of him for Bournemouth, and I think Newcastle have got a decent player there. And he's another player that this team misses. I think a full strength front line in this formation. You'd look at an Allan Saint-Maximin, a Ryan Fraser, and a Callum Wilson, and people wonder why we're struggling to create and score, because probably 2 of the 3 players that you would pick in the forward positions are injured or ill. And the other one's looking tired as well, having to almost score and create for himself, as you've mentioned. So yeah, I think Ryan Fraser's the one that I wouldn't write him off yet personally.
Life Goals' question, he says, on a likelihood scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate these, Liam? Tamori?
God, he's our going at us today. Tamori, 3.
Willems?
5.
Williams?
7.
Josh King?
1.
Okay, there we go. Hope that
That's
answers
an easy
that.
change, by the way. That could change. Watch, it'll be Tamori and King will be announced in the next few days.
Just Me says, is Anderson worth giving his head in the cup game? We need to see him. Dubravka as well. Somebody asked that question earlier on. Would you give Dubravka a run out in the cup game? I would give Dubravka a run out. I think Steve Bruce will as well. But what about Anderson?
I'd be brutally honest. I think Saturday's a write-off personally, and that's said with a heavy heart because the cup's such a massive competition. But Tuesday's more important because of the off-the-field stuff. Newcastle United need to stay in this division, and they need to keep their head above water. And Tuesday is a much more important game than going on a cup run, which we're probably not going to win. We've had the odd cup run recently. Obviously, I want to win trophies. I want to do well in every competition. But ultimately, I just think it's a bit of a write-off. I played Dubravka. I played 3 or 4 others who haven't been getting in the side recently, and I bring a few kids in as well. I would treat it very much like that because, look, the reason why I've come to this decision is you play a full team against an understrength championship side in the League Cup quarter-final, and you still don't get through. So what's the guarantee Newcastle United send out a full-strength team against Arsenal, who will probably be understrength largely as well, and still won't get beat? They probably will. That's just the way it is. We've proven that very recently. So for me, I would use it as an opportunity to get minutes into people to improve fitness, among others, including Martin Dubravka and blood players like Elliot Anderson, provided he's been doing the work in training.
Yeah, okay. Looks like I've got some dodgy earrings and hair. Yeah, it does actually. It's quite.
I've got the earrings, like you look like you got some Pat Butchers on.
Some Pat Butchers. Any chance of Origi from Liverpool on loan, says Jay Welsh?
I think he is a player that they're willing to let go. And he probably is one of those names who's getting bandied about at the moment. But a lot will depend on wages. And I think there's a lot of clubs out there are much more willing to pay a larger percentage of wages when it comes to loan deals than Newcastle United. That's why Newcastle United are largely picking the bones out of like your damaged goods, your Nabil Bentalebs from last season, your Valentino Lazzaros, these damaged goods who they can pick up only putting a small percentage or adding a buy-on clause at the end of the contract. So I don't know. Divock Origi is a player that I would take in a heartbeat. Newcastle United. I think he works hard. I think he had a good season last season. But do I see him come to Newcastle? It could be a name that crops up towards the end of the window, but at this stage, I don't see it.
Damari Gray, that's another name. See what I mean about names?
It's one I mentioned earlier, and it's a player that they really did quite fancy in the summer. He's a player being offered around a lot of football clubs at the moment. I think the way my reading of the situation is the lad's a free contract at the end of the season, and I think he's 24. I think he sees probably a little bit more value in leaving at the end of the season and getting a big contract at a probably a better club than he might be able to pick up in January. But he's surplus to requirements effectively at Leicester. And like I say, he is somebody that's been offered around. And Newcastle United were interested very recently.
Do you think Bruce will get an extended contract, says Alan Thompson?
If Mike Ashley's still here, then possibly, yeah. If Mike Ashley's still here look, if the takeover's still going on, I don't think decisions like that will be taken. But if the takeover falls to bits and Mike Ashley is in control of the football club solely, then yes, I do believe he might well get a new contract as long as he keeps doing his sticking to his remit and keeping Newcastle United in the Premier League.
Yeah, okay. Out of the players running out of contract, which ones would you give a new deal to?
Clark, 100%. I would give a new deal to Fernandez, 100%. I would seriously consider giving a contract to Shaw. I would seriously consider giving a contract to Jacob Murphy on the idea, but it will be a short-term one because I still think the lad's got a lot to prove. I wouldn't. I mean, if somebody wanted to take Murphy this month, I'd be tempted to let him go. But he's one of the fringe ones. Dwight Gale personally is one. Unless you could find a buyer that would take him, then no, I think his time's done. And I also think DeAndre Yedlin, not for me. I think you need to start improving your squad, and he's an obvious place where they can improve.
Yeah, just refresh on Dwight Gale, just what you said on him, because Colin's had a few issues. He's a regular viewer. Just what your view on Dwight Gale is?
I think there's quite an unusual situation with Dwight Gale because he's somebody that Steve Bruce talked about in a press conference that I was in probably 3 weeks ago or a month ago, that Dwight Gale was somebody who would do everything within his power to get him a potential new contract at Newcastle United. And since then, we've not really seen the player. I think there's something up there. There's something strange about that. I don't have any insight with regards to that, but I do think it's a very strange situation.
Yeah, Bentaleb, lots of people going, no, including just me. I know it's been mentioned, but surely they won't go down that avenue again.
I don't think so. But it wouldn't shock you, would it? I think Steve Bruce did quite like him as a player, but not for me. No, nowhere near good enough.
Just looking back on the last couple of games, Liverpool, it was an unexpected point, wasn't it? Really, and I didn't think Newcastle played that badly against Leicester. I know a lot of people did, but they carried on where they left off against Liverpool. They just came up against a far superior midfield who bossed it, and Madison, he's just a hell of a player, and and Tillemans, we're just you're always going to struggle when you're playing class acts like that, and they're on fire.
Look, that's the thing. I think if you take Leicester in isolation, you can do the same with Liverpool and Manchester City. They're not disastrous performances. The problem is that Newcastle United fans know the bigger picture, and it's those kind of performances. Newcastle United could be identical as what they were against Leicester, not create anything when they play Sheffield United this time next week. They could be absolutely identical because there is no difference. Newcastle playing a top side and a bottom side. They do not have much possession. They don't create much and they don't score much. And they look leaky at the back. Look, I think this formation, is probably the best formation for Newcastle United defensively. And I think if that's what you're going to look at and say, can we limit opportunities for other sides? I think we're better at that than going open and trying to score a load of goals. I just wish Steve Bruce would own it. That's my biggest problem with him, is that 18 months down the line, it's still excuses and it's still blame and it's still, I can't do this, I can't change that. It's always something else. If I'm him, he needs to own it and just say, look, if this is the way we play, this is the way we play. We'll play on the break and we'll not score many goals, but we'll nick points here and there or whatever. Own it. Be confident in what you do, but I don't think he is confident. I think he's stumbling around, not quite knowing what his best team is, what his best formation is. It will be no surprise to me if he reverts to a 4 as soon as he possibly can at the back, even though this 5's worked really well. The 3 centre-halves have been excellent, largely, in the games that they've played. It suits the full-backs better. He's stumbled across a midfield. I say stumbled across very deliberately in Isaac Hayden and Matty Longstaff that could work, even against when you have more of the ball. Look, it'll allow them to break the play up. Hassel and Harry, I think they're good midfielders. But look, I just don't have any confidence that he'll stick to a formula or any kind of system that suits his players. I think he'll switch back around to a 4, which means Shaw's redundant. Lascelles doesn't play that well in a 3. In a 4. I think there's problems all over the park when you go back to that. The midfield is problematic. I fear that he's gonna bomb John Joe Shelby back into the side. When I think they don't really look like they've missed him. I think that 20-minute performance against Leicester was a case in point that look, if he's the answer to the questions, then God help what the questions are, because he's not really good enough. He's never been good enough, not consistently. And I think obviously he's probably carrying his injury, etc. And he's had issues himself. But I just don't want to see players that anywhere near the side. I don't think Jeff Hendricks particularly added anything to this Newcastle United side. But I think we'll see all those brought back into the side on Saturday evening. it's just going to be a case of, for me, the most important thing is what team he selects on Tuesday night, and that to me is a make or break, because if you suddenly lose, you really are looking over your shoulder, because you start going down a dodgy route when you start sliding towards the end of the season, and losses like that aren't good for morale. So I think they've got to get something more than that. They've got to go and beat Sheffield United. Everyone else has, and I think they've got to do it quite well. And I think they've just got to write off Arsenal largely.
Quick one on that one from Tom Dixon. Alano Velasco. Any news on that?
It's a name that has been mentioned for. I know he was a name that cropped up in conversations in the summer. I don't know if it's anything that's been seriously considered in this window, because he would cost money, and I think loan deals are primarily what Newcastle United are looking at.
Okay, Nicholas is asking a question about journalists during a full lockdown. I mean, I presume that Miles will still be allowed to go to games.
Yes, so it's one journalist per organisation. I've been to a couple of games during the time, but Miles has served 20 years. He does the game for us. It doesn't really, nothing much has really changed, despite a lot changing for everybody else. And our offer, the live sport continues, and we're still. It's a very unusual situation. So you'll go in, you'll be temperature tested, wear your mask, urge to wash your hands, etc. Then you'll go up, and then you'll be sat probably not within 15 yards of anybody else. If you're in the press box, or if you're in the boxes, you'll be sharing a box with one other person. Again, one will sit in the front row, one will sit in the back row of the box seating. So yeah, it's quite an unusual experience in my experience, but nothing's really changed this week. And until there's COVID call-offs, which there may well be, who knows? I know there's been a lot of. I think the Premier League recorded its highest number of positive COVID tests this week. It was a bit of a record for them. So I don't anticipate it's going to get any better. And I'd imagine we probably are going to get call-offs, and that would be the only change, that all of a sudden we don't have a game on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere soon, unfortunately. Mark says, sorry lads, who did Liam say Leicester were offering out? I heard Gray was their others.
Chowdhury. Hamza Chowdhury.
Yeah. What was the issue with Lazaro last season? He looked handy, but Bruce barely played him, says Life Goals.
I don't know what the issue was with him. It was a strange situation, and I know it frustrated the player a lot. But we'll have to write that off. It wasn't, to me, he didn't really do enough, even when he was put in the side, to warrant it. Look, they've brought Jacob Murphy in this season, and it was Lazaro really that much better? I think he probably was technically slightly better, but he didn't really contribute a whole lot more than what Jacob Murphy has in the time that he's been there. So, look, I wouldn't have spent 20 million on the lad. So maybe that's what I always look at. That we only see, the bit you see is the bit that matters on a Saturday, but you don't see the other 4 days when the lad comes in training. You don't see them around the place. And I think it's always really difficult to judge team selections in that sense. We all have a go, and it's all a bit of fun. I would pick him, I'd do this. But only managers really know what players are putting it in. Some players will just toss it off in training. You know, they'll not bother and things like that. So you don't know. You can never judge it. And I don't know. I'm not necessarily suggesting that was the case with Lazaro. But like I say, we only see the 5% on a Saturday that it matters the most, but you don't see the rest of it. And I always wonder with that, when players come in and they're not given opportunities, it's probably got to be more of a story in that sense.
Mrs. #9Talk, good evening. She says, do you think the new rules regarding transfers will have a detrimental effect on our transfer hopes?
No, I don't think so, because they'll largely be targeting domestic loans, is my understanding. So I don't think it will. I did see Sam Allardyce was talking about that the other day, wasn't he? He's already playing the blame game, saying that he was going to sign X, Y, and Z and couldn't because of the new transfer rules. But look, I think it's going to bring the challenges for everybody, but they're going to bring the same challenges almost for every club in the division. It's something everyone will have to adapt to.
Do you think we'll go down this season, says Martin?
No, I don't. I don't think we will. I'm not saying we won't have flirtations with relegation. I'm not saying we won't slide from time to time and look like we're going to get involved, but I just think we've got enough points on the board, and I think they'll collect enough in games that they'll get the odd result. They'll be fine, I think, personally.
Yeah, Tom Dixon asking, why do you think Bruce keeps changing his formation? It's $1 million question, that, isn't it? I mean, a lot of it will be down to players' availability, etc. He seems to worry about the opposition more than instead of concentrating on the positive that we can do.
Look, again, my opinion, but I think he's obsessed with 4 at the back and playing 2 up front. And I think he will always revert to type and will always want to go back to 4 at the back and 2 up front, despite the fact that defensively in particular, this team is much better suited to playing 3 or 5, with and without the ball. But I just don't think Steve Bruce is happy with his team playing in that manner.
Yeah, Money Mike Ashley account was back. I mean, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But remember the 12th of September is something that he said or she said. Any significance in that date that you can recall? I'd have to really go through the record books for that. It's dragged down so long.
No, I don't think it was. Was it not? Look, correct me if I'm wrong, whoever asked that question. But was he not referencing something that he said on September the 12th? I think that's what it was. So,
right, okay.
Check back, but I don't know.
Yeah, Zero to Swim Bike Rogan says Bruce never seems to try 3 in midfield, which might help with the slower players we have. It's a good idea.
It may well work for them. Yeah, I think he's got the formation about right. I think the system's shown in the last few games that it works, and it works with the defensive players that they've got, and that's probably what I would stick with. Look, I think they could do with a bit more quality in the wide areas because. In the formation that he plays, not to get too technical, but I think the fullbacks have a big part to play, and I think he could do with a little better quality in that department. And the midfield's a problem, but no, I think he's stumbled across a decent system, but I just don't have any faith that he'll stick with it.
We're getting a big amount of injuries. I mean, this has been a problem that follows Steve Bruce around, of course, isn't it? Why do you think that is? I mean, is there a difference, with COVID? Maybe they're not getting the same kind of. Yeah, maybe it's something to do with that.
Yeah, I'm not going to use it as an excuse, but it's affecting every single club. And injuries, and illness, little injuries that you wouldn't normally pick up because it's very formulaic. The way that managers sort of have their training and their regimes, and they're not just planning. They're not just turning up on a Monday saying, "Right, lads, what we're doing the day." They do have a formula on the way that they do things, and it's planned months in advance. I think what COVID's forced everyone to do is rip up the rulebook. Games have come at different intervals, shorter periods between games. Just really, really strange travelling practices. Everything's had to change, and I think we are seeing little knock-on effects. So I do think it's a little bit. Look, injuries do follow Bruce around. There's no getting away from that they have. He's had these problems elsewhere, but I don't necessarily think he's 100% to blame for this.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't get through everybody's questions. So many questions and so little time. You've broken your New Year's resolution already. Let's just have a quick question from John from qtechshop.co.uk. He says, in your opinion, will we sign a player for cash over 10 million in the January transfer window?
No.
I don't think so. I'll ask this one as well because John asked you've had some good questions tonight, and somebody else asked this. Are the pre-match press conferences stage managed so no awkward questions are directed at managers, the sort of questions fans want asked? It's different now with COVID because they don't have to sit with the manager anymore, do they? A lot of it's done online.
It's a strange situation and it isn't conducive to those kind of questions being asked. That might sound really weird to everybody. So I'll play out really, really quickly because I can see the time ticking away. So you've got a room full of people. There is an energy. There is a way that things push in a certain direction. A questioning. People will feed off each other's questions and there'll be almost like an attack and it'll go. There isn't any of that with a Zoom. So everybody's sitting in their own homes or sitting at the game or wherever it may be in the press box. And they'll all be brought in. You have to put your hand up on Zoom. It's a little feature. And then you get the chance to ask your question. Sometimes you're asked, is there a follow-up question? But then it's down to the person who's running the Zoom call where that then goes next. And it's normally quite, it'll go in order of the people who've put their hand up. But all of a sudden you might have a question saying, right, drill down, right, what about that, Bruce? And then it'll be a question from a journalist who's come from a different area post-match. Well, what did you think about Leicester? And it's gone. That moment then disappears, you know what I mean? Because you're then taken off. You're muted. It's not a case of everybody talking. You're muted and it moves on to the next person. You're going to
Makes
know what
it
I mean?
so it's no wonder the hard questions can't get asked. I bet you Bruce loves that. I bet you all managers love it. It's perfect for them. Perfect.
But it is because it can be censored in some ways. I'm not necessarily suggesting it is 100% censored in that way, but it just hasn't got the same energy as a face-to-face press conference.
No.
Where you can feel the tension, you can feel, and there's an angle. If somebody starts going, you won't change the subject. You'll feed off that question and ask the next one, and someone else will do the same and the same, and it works like that. There isn't the same level of accountability over Zoom, in my opinion.
Mad Mark just asks, do you know if the club resolved the issue with the 2 medical staff who were stood down in September 2020?
It's a really good question. I don't know that fact, but I think I am led to believe that I think they have left, but I haven't had any confirmation with regards to that.
Luke, I'll answer that question. Nobody can give you a time scale, mate. Nobody whatsoever. You know, how long's a piece of string? Nobody knows at all. Lots of people say, Lee, right, I may have fell out with Steve Bruce. Well, if he has, these things happen. Lee's a good pal of mine, and Liam's as well. He's a good lad, does a hard job. Three pages he has to fill in the Chronicle every night, and it's been hard with Mike Ashley. It has to be said, as the owner. But Lee does a cracking job. He's up against it all the time. Just Me says, great show tonight, lads. Very good from Liam. Proper answers to proper questions. Great stuff. And lots of positives coming in. Where can people find you, mate? Do your little plug.
So just look down here. That's my Twitter handle. If you like what I do on here, give us a follow. Also, we do loads of different things with the Shields Gazette. If you've probably read me stuff if you're on here. But we don't buy into all the clickbait rubbish, all that kind of thing. We work on a subscription model. So if you like what we do, it's going to cost you a little bit of money. It's a monthly subscription. It doesn't cost a fortune. It costs £1 or £2 per month. But that would help me along, help me job along, get me some kudos with the bosses. If one person every time I do this show, one person adds a subscription, it will get me that little bit of kudos. So anybody out there, if you want to subscribe, if you've got it within your power, if you've got the money to do so, every little helps.
Next week we will change the day, I think, Liam, because obviously we've got Tuesday night. It's a big game. Potentially we could switch it to the Wednesday, I think, if that's all right with you.
Sounds fine to me, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that show next week, we'll drop the retro show next Wednesday, and we will do the Liam show on Wednesday night. Great stuff, mate. As always, good to have you on. Good to be back in the norm. Don't forget, tune in, guys and girls. Friday night, going to be a great show. This the Three Amigos exclusive interview. He's not doing any other interviews, no other podcasts. This is the only Newcastle United podcast he will be doing. Exclusive interview with Keith Patterson from the Newcastle Consortium supporters. So make sure you book in 5:30 till 7:30 for that one. And we are doing a t-shirt for the food bank. NUFC Matters, Who Let the Dogs t-shirt out. It's a one-off because of Malcolm's internet crashing all the time on a Thursday. John from qtechshop.co.uk has done this t-shirt. If you go to @SteveWraith on Twitter, give us a follow, and you will be able to bid for the t-shirt on there. It's a great t-shirt. It's a one-off, and all proceeds go to the food bank. I'm back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, and it is retro night tomorrow night. I'm joined by Stu Penman, Neil Mitchell, George Mitchell and Steve Hasty, and Steve Wilkinson, and we'll be looking back at games between Newcastle United and Nottingham Forest. So that's for all of you who can remember when we used to play Notts Forest. It's nearly as long ago since we played Sunderland when we played them. So, and by the looks of it, Money Mike Ashley is back on again. So if you're on Twitter, well worth having a look, because he's always humorous. Have a good night, Liam. Great to have you back on, mate. See you next Wednesday, mate. Take care.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everyone out there.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.